All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another deep dive with us. This one I think you're going to find really interesting because it's all about relationships
Hmm.
and, thriving relationships. Like, how do you really make those connections work? We got some really interesting material from you, actually,
Yeah.
about this, and it's a YouTube podcast script.
Correct.
And it really gets into the nitty-gritty. We're talking about building trust, how to communicate better, showing appreciation, growing together, and even, self-love,
Right.
and how all that plays into it. And the cool thing is, like, this isn't just for romantic relationship.
Yeah.
This is for like any connection you want to make stronger,
Yeah. Absolutely.
friendships, family, work. So, are you ready to kind of dig in and see what we can find?
Let's do it.
Okay, great. So one thing that really struck me from the script right off the bat is how it talks about trust. It's not just about these big, grand gestures.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's those small, consistent actions
Mhm.
that really matter.
And that consistency.
It's so important. And being reliable,
Yeah.
Showing up.
Showing up. Yeah.
When you say you're going to be there, doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. That follow through.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're laying down like brick by brick.
Yeah.
That
Foundation.
that foundation. Exactly. And I've thought it was interesting because they also talk about, what happens when trust is broken.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
that happens
It does happen.
when no one's up the ships.
It does. And, the source says that it is possible to rebuild,
Hmm.
but it takes effort
Yeah.
from both sides. So think about it. Like, have you ever had that experience
Oh,
where
yeah.
trust was broken? Like, what did it take to start rebuilding?
It's hard.
It is.
It is really hard. But I think you're right. It's that willingness to be vulnerable again.
Yeah.
And kind of go, okay, let's slowly, try and build those bricks back up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But speaking of like, rebuilding and kind of navigating those tricky parts of relationships.
This script also talks a lot about communication. And what I thought was interesting, it goes way beyond just the words you say.
It's so true. It's how you say it,
Mm-hmm.
and this source really emphasized active listening,
Yeah.
like really being present in the conversation, like putting your phone down, turning off the TV, and just really trying to understand the other person's point of view.
Yeah, without judgment. It's like making that person feel heard.
Yeah.
And just waiting for your turn to talk.
Oh, that's so true.
I know I've been guilty of that.
Oh, me too.
Sometimes, where you're just like, okay, yeah, uh-huh. But you're really thinking about what you're going to say next.
Yes.
But when you actually are actively listening, it's a whole different dynamic.
It really is.
It changes the whole conversation.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, like when it is your turn to talk, this source says, be clear, be respectful,
Right.
avoid those assumptions, or mind games.
Yeah, the mind game.
Nobody wins.
No, nobody wins with those.
Be open, be honest, even when it's tough, even when it's about something difficult to talk about.
Yeah, those conversations we all try to avoid sometimes.
Right.
But, this source actually says those conversations can be good.
I
If
absolutely.
you frame them the right way.
Yeah.
It's like looking at it as a problem to solve together,
Mm-hmm.
not a battle
Battle.
to win,
Yeah.
And that little shift in perspective can
Yeah.
make a huge difference.
It does.
So we've talked about trust. We've talked about communication.
Yeah.
Let's talk about showing appreciation.
Yes.
Because this was a big one in this script. Like, just the power of gratitude, even in small gestures.
I love that they talked about that.
Yeah.
It can really change the whole relationship dynamic.
It's so easy to get caught up
Yeah.
in, like, the big picture, that you forget about those little things. And they matter.
They matter so much.
A thank you, a compliment, even just a text
Right.
saying, hey, thinking of you. Like, that can change someone's whole day.
And what I really liked is how they connected that to people feeling valued.
Oh, absolutely.
When you feel appreciated, you feel seen,
Yeah.
and that makes you want to invest more.
Yeah, like you want to give more, you want to do more. So think about it. Like, what's a time when someone showed you appreciation
Mhm.
that really stuck with you? Like, what did they do that just made you feel so good?
Yeah. Could be anything.
Anything,
Yeah.
Just those moments, even though they're small,
Right.
they can have a huge impact.
They really can.
So we've got trust, communication, appreciation. What about growth?
Yeah. This is where it gets fun
Okay.
because this source, they talk about relationships as like these living, breathing things
Yeah.
that need to grow to stay healthy.
Yeah, it's like a plant, right?
Exactly.
If you don't give it water, if you don't give it sunlight,
It wilts.
It wilts.
Yeah.
It doesn't thrive.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in a relationship? Like, how do you actually put that into practice?
Well, they say it's about, having shared goals,
Okay.
supporting each other's dreams,
Mm-hmm.
trying new things together.
Yeah. So it's like you're on this journey together,
Yeah, exactly.
even if the paths, twist and turn a little bit.
Right. And I love that they also talked about celebrating milestones together,
Yeah.
whether they're big or small.
It's like making those memories that
Yeah.
you can look back on and
Yeah.
be like, remember when we did that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Just building that shared history.
Yeah, those shared experiences that bind you together.
Exactly. Now, what are some things that you and like someone close to you
Mhm.
could maybe explore together to
Yeah.
kind of grow together?
Yeah, for sure.
Could be anything.
Anything.
Learn a new skill, travel somewhere new,
Mhm.
even just like having those deeper conversations
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
were talking about earlier. But, you know, you mentioned supporting each other's dreams
Mhm.
and like individual growth. Isn't there like a tension sometimes between that
Oh, for sure.
and like the needs of the relationship?
That's such a good question.
Because like, how do you balance that?
And they actually do address that
Okay.
in this source. And they talk about the importance of self-love,
Oh,
like taking care of yourself
right.
so that you can actually be there for the other person.
It's that whole you can't pour from an empty cup thing.
Exactly.
But I feel like that's a struggle
Oh, for sure.
for so many people, myself included.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's easy to get caught up
Mhm.
in taking care of everyone else.
Yeah.
And then you put yourself last.
Right. And so they offer some tips like setting boundaries, prioritizing self-care,
Yeah.
and just treating yourself with kindness.
So what does that actually look like? Because
Mhm.
sometimes that feels almost selfish.
Yeah, right.
Especially in a relationship, you're like, oh, I should be putting them first.
Right.
But how do you balance those things?
It's about recognizing that you're not being selfish
Okay.
by taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually essential for you to show up
Yeah.
as your best self
Yeah.
in all parts of your life,
Right.
And I have to say, this really resonates with me personally because there was a time
Mm-hmm.
when I was so focused on giving to others
Yeah.
that I completely neglected myself.
Oh, I've been there.
And it wasn't sustainable.
Right.
And it really hurt my relationships.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started taking care of myself, like, getting enough sleep, exercising, doing things that I enjoy,
All right.
that I saw a real difference in my well-being
Yeah.
in my relationships.
It's almost like those little things we were talking about before with trust.
Exactly.
It's those little consistent actions
Mhm.
that build that foundation, whether it's for yourself or
Yeah.
for your relationship.
Absolutely.
So let's recap for a second because we've covered a lot. So this YouTube script you sent us, it starts with trust.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about consistency, reliability, vulnerability
Right.
being those building blocks.
Yes.
Then it goes into communication,
Mhm.
active listening,
Yeah.
expressing yourself clearly,
Right.
respectfully, even having those hard conversations in a
Mhm.
constructive way.
Right.
And then we talked about appreciation, those little gestures,
Right.
making people feel valued,
Mm-hmm.
and then growing together,
Yeah.
having shared goals, trying new things.
Absolutely.
And then finally, self-love, taking care of yourself
Yeah.
so that you can be there for others.
It all starts with you.
Exactly. Now, keep in mind, these are like secrets to thriving relationships.
Right.
They're not guarantees.
No.
Relationships take work, right?
Absolutely they do.
They're not always easy,
Not always.
but with effort
Yeah.
and kind of following these principles,
Mhm.
it is possible to create those really deep, fulfilling connections. Yeah.
And before we move on, this source leaves us with a really thought-provoking idea.
Oh, I love this one.
They say relationships are a journey,
Mm-hmm.
not a destination.
So good.
What does that mean to you?
What a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what does it mean to you?
Like, think about your own connections.
Yeah.
What adventures are you on? Where are you going?
Where are those paths leading?
Exactly.
Something to think about.
Yeah, it is something to think about.
Jeez.
So we've covered a lot
We have
in this first part of our deep dive.
a lot of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really is like a journey
Yeah.
with all those twists and turns. So we've talked about trust, communication, appreciation, growth,
Right.
all these amazing things that this YouTube podcast script dives into
Mm-hmm.
to help us build these thriving relationships.
Yeah.
But, before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on
Okay.
that they emphasize, and it's self-love. Oh, that's so important.
It is, and I feel like sometimes it gets overlooked,
It does.
when we're talking about relationships.
Yeah.
But this source really highlights it as like a prerequisite
Mm-hmm.
for healthy connections.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
You know, if you're not taking care of yourself,
Right.
how can you possibly be there for someone else?
It's so true, and I think so many people struggle with that,
Oh, yeah.
including myself.
Me too.
You know, it's easy to get caught up
Yeah.
in taking care of everyone else and
Mhm.
putting your own needs on the back burner.
Right. And so they talk about, setting boundaries,
Okay.
making sure you're taking time for yourself,
Yeah.
prioritizing those things that make you feel good,
Mm.
just being kind to yourself.
But sometimes, I don't know, it
Yeah.
feels almost selfish, you know?
Right.
Especially when you're in a relationship, you think, oh, I should be focusing on them.
Yeah, you feel guilty. But they make this point that it's not selfish at all.
Okay.
It's actually the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It's essential
Okay.
because when you're taking care of yourself, that's when you can actually show up as your
Right.
best self in
Yeah.
all your relationships.
That makes sense.
You know, this really resonated with me personally
Oh, yeah.
because there was a time when I was so focused on giving to others
Mm-hmm.
that I completely neglected my own needs.
I've been there.
It's easy to do,
Yeah.
but it wasn't sustainable.
Right.
And honestly, it really started to hurt my relationships.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started prioritizing things like getting enough sleep, making time for exercise, doing things I enjoy,
Right.
that I actually saw a shift in
Yeah.
my well-being
Yeah.
and in my relationships.
So it's almost like those little things we were talking about with trust.
Exactly.
It's those small, consistent actions, those
Mhm.
little investments that
Yeah.
you make in yourself.
It all adds up.
Yeah.
It creates that foundation.
Yeah. Exactly. So to kind of wrap things up here,
All right.
this YouTube podcast script, it really emphasized these key elements for building thriving relationships.
Right.
It starts with trust,
Mm-hmm.
that foundation of consistency, reliability, vulnerability.
Yeah.
Then it goes into communication,
Mm-hmm.
active listening, expressing yourself clearly,
Mm-hmm.
respectfully, even having those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And then it talks about the power of appreciation,
Yeah, those little gestures.
making people feel valued, seen,
Mm-hmm.
and then growing together,
Right.
supporting each other's dreams,
Yeah,
trying new things.
absolutely.
And finally, it brings it back to self-love,
Yeah.
that foundation of taking care of yourself
Mm-hmm.
so you can show up fully for others.
So important.
Now it's important to remember these are like secrets.
Mm-hmm.
They're not guarantees.
Right.
Relationships take work.
They do. They do.
Right. They're not always going to be easy.
No, there's going to be bumps.
But with conscious effort
Yeah.
and kind of following these principles,
Mm-hmm.
it's possible to build those really deep connections that we
Very-
all crave.
Absolutely.
And before we move on to part 3, this source leaves us with one final thought.
Okay.
They say relationships are a journey,
Mm-hmm.
not a destination.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It really is.
So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, what does it mean to you?
Think about your own connections.
Mm-hmm.
What adventures are you on right now?
Yeah.
Where are you going with the people in your life?
What paths are you creating?
Exactly.
It's really something to think about.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
does.
About, where we're headed in those relationships and how we're nurturing them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're all on these unique paths, And it's not about reaching some final destination, but enjoying the journey along the way.
Exactly.
So on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive for today.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot.
We really have. We've explored trust, communication, appreciation, growth, self-love.
All those key ingredients for those thriving relationships.
Exactly. And it all came from this fascinating YouTube podcast script that you sent our way. So thank you for sharing that. It gave us so much to talk about.
It was a great one.
It really was. And I hope this has given everyone listening some food for thought, some new perspectives on their own relationships.
Yeah, maybe even spark some ideas for how to nurture those connections even more.
Absolutely. And remember, relationships are a journey, not a destination. So keep exploring, keep growing, keep connecting.
And keep those deep dive topics coming.
We love hearing from you. So until next time, happy connecting, everyone.